Hello, and welcome to another Warhammer the Old World video. Today I'm going to be painting some stone trolls for the Orc and Goblin army. I have all 6 available sculpts, but I'm only going to paint 3 of them today. This is a test colour scheme, but it's also going to be a permanent colour scheme because I'm not going to repaint them. I'm going to start after having primed the models white to give them a good healthy coat of Nuln Oil, which will give them shading in the recesses. Because I like using speed paints and contrast paints, I tend to stick to a white primer, a white base coat to paint over. As those paints like to go over a white primer, they don't like to go over black. They do not go over black at all well. So I suggest if you're going to use speed paints or contrast paints that you use a white base coat. So after the miniatures have had some time to dry, and it takes a fair amount of time because I'm putting a heavy coat of Nuln Oil on. Once it's dried, I'm coming in with white paint. In this case I'm using dead white from Vallejo, and I'm going to dry brush over the raised areas of the models because I want that white base coat, that white prime, to paint over with the speed paints and contrast paints. So I'm intending to use Games Workshop's colour scheme as a guide rather than copy it to the best of my ability. I'm going to use this Raging Sea colour. It's a colour that I actually really like from Army Painter. It's kind of a greeny bluey colour, and I'm going to use it for the stone troll's skin. It's certainly a different colour to what Games Workshop would use. They would use a more traditional blue. I've gone for adding a hint of green because I like this colour. And because I own it, I want to use it. And that's just the way it is. I suggest that if you're painting your stone trolls, you could follow Games Workshop's guide and do them blue and white. But I've chose to do mine slightly different. Just personal preference. And just with my Tomb Kings and my Hero Quest videos, if you've seen any of those, the name of the game here is in getting stuff completed to a tabletop standard. A standard that you wouldn't be embarrassed by to set down in front of an opponent. And certainly at the end here, I am not embarrassed by these figures. Yes, they could be painted better. You could put more time and effort into them, but that's not why I'm here. If you want time and effort, you want glazes, you want proper shading, you want highlights, you want layers, this is not the channel for you. I'm now going to take some time to come back in with the white paint to touch up some areas of the models that I want to remain white. And that's because I'm going to be painting them a different colour to the blue. That goes without saying. But you understand what I'm saying. I'm painting their nails, the teeth, areas of the loincloth, maybe areas of the weapon that got hit with the blue paint. I'm painting it back to a white. And I'm now going to come in with some broadsword silver, and I'm going to use it to paint the jewellery that some of the, if you can call it that some of the trolls have around their necks and earrings, things like that. There isn't an awful lot of the models that use this colour, but you'll see here where I'm painting. I have been experimenting with camera angles, and I'm not particularly happy with some of the camera angles in this video, but I have a fix for that on the way to me in the form of a new boom arm. So hopefully future videos will be slightly better. Now, in moving away from the Games Workshop traditional blue and white again, I'm going to paint the skin areas, the visible skin areas of which is really the bellies of the models, and also the nails and teeth I'm going to paint with Pallid Bone, just because I don't want them to be white. I may build up to a whiter shade, but I'm not going to start with white and leave it white. Even I'm not that bad. I'm now moving on to the weapon shafts, and I'm going to use Rudy Fur. I have found it makes a nice wood colour, so that's exactly what it's going to be used for. It's going to be used to paint the handles of their big stone hammers, axes, whatever you want to call them, bludgeoning devices. Now moving away from Army Painter Speed Paints and on to Citadel Contrast, and this one's Snakebite Leather, really nice colour. And I'm going to use it to paint the loincloths and some leather work that the trolls have on them, wristbands, necklaces, things like that. Trolls don't have fancy necklaces, they have a piece of leather with a bell hanging off it, etc. And I'm now going to paint the stones, the big rocks that they're carrying with which to bludgeon the enemy. I'm going to use Occultist Cloak, and I'm going to mix it 50-50 with Speed Paint Medium, and that is to dilute it down and make it slightly less grey, slightly more rock-like. That's the theory anyway. We'll see if it's a success or not. You'll see here that I've added a little too much Speed Paint Medium, thinning the paint too much. So I'm going back in with some Occultist Cloak and adding a little more colour. And I end up with a happier result, happier for myself anyway. Another Citadel colour, I'm going to go in with some Screaming Skull, and I'm going to highlight, slightly highlight, the nails and the teeth. And I'm going to give the belly a little bit of a highlight as well with this colour. And I'm now going to start into the bases, and I'm going to use just a dark brown chocolatey coloured paint that I've got, and I'm going to give it a good thick coat onto the bases, and then I'll sprinkle some sand and some heavier grit onto the bases. That's just the way I do my bases. Once that's done, I'll come in with Agrax Earthshade, and I'm going to use the Agrax Earthshade as like a binding agent to hold the heavier pieces of grit onto the bases. It also stains them a more browny, muddy, rough groundy type colour. Once that's finished, I'm going to edge my bases, and I use a tan earth colour. Use whichever colour you like. This is just my personal preference. The lovely thing about painting is there's no right way or wrong way. There's no right colour or wrong colour. It's what you like. So edge your bases for your army whichever way you like. So I'm now going to come in with some PVA glue, which is an ordinary wood glue, and what I use it for is holding items that I want on a base to a base. In this case it's going to be some static grass that I'm going to sprinkle over the bases. I use this, you'll see exactly what type of static grass I use, and I'll then come in with some tufts. So it's just a matter of using an old paintbrush and painting the glue on as you would paint, and putting it in areas that you want to have a grass colour. I'm then going to come in with some Warlord Games static grass. You can use any static grass, this just happens to be the one I have at hand. And I'm going to just sprinkle it on over the top of the areas that are glued. You'll see it still kind of looks white under the grass, that's just the PVA glue, but it'll dry and it'll go clear, and honestly it'll just look like grass, you'll see at the end. And lastly I'm going to come in with some tufts, some self-made tufts and some army painter tufts, just to add a little bit of variety to the miniatures, and I'll stick 3 or 4 to each base. And again, this is just to bring your eye to the base just as much as to the miniature, and I think it's quite effective. You can buy a static box for making your own tufts, and if you really get into this style of basing, I highly recommend it. You can go wild with different types of grasses and different colours and shades and things like that. Or you can just stick to the likes of the army painter tufts ready made. They're very reasonably priced. And that's it, the first 3 of my stone trolls done. I have 3 more to do, and that'll be quite a big unit of 6. And then I'll probably move on to another Orc and Goblin unit. Undecided which one yet, but there will be videos made for it regardless. Hopefully you've got something out of this video, even if it's just a bit of inspiration or a bit of I can do this. You can, as long as you've got the right types of materials, the right paints. Go out and buy yourself some speed paints or some contrast paints or a mixture of both. Get yourself a standard white colour and a standard black colour, a can of white spray, and you're ready to rock and roll. And obviously a packet of decent brushes, and you can paint anything. You can paint absolutely anything to a decent gaming tabletop standard. Please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. There'll be plenty more content to come. Thank you.